Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast where we rob a bank and then we sit in a wall sweating and smelling for weeks. My name's David, and Ross, you are a magnificent cunt.
Oh, C-bombs straight away. My name's Sam, and this time next week I'll be sucking down pina coladas in a hot tub with six girls named, Ross and Dave. Damn it.
And I'm
Hello,
Ross.
sailor.
And I'm Ross. Far too smart to be a fucking podcaster.
Is anyone here smarter than me?
You're exactly as smart to be on this podcast, Ross. Don't
The,
worry.
the
Just
empirical
the
evidence
required
on that,
level.
the empirical evidence on that is still out, Ross. We're not sure.
We'll get back to it.
So this week we watched the Spike Lee film Inside Man, which came out in 2006. First Spike Lee movie we've done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although this is not particularly like Spike Lee. It's not a Spike Lee joint. It doesn't feel like a Spike Lee movie necessarily compared to some of his other movies.
Yes, it's lacking a certain directness, isn't it? A certain Spike Lee is known for directing quite films that comment more on society than this does, I think.
Yeah. But an interesting spin on a heist movie, and that's I think, is this our first heist movie as well? My God,
We've done movies with heists in them, but
we've done loads of
first
heist movies. We did A Fish Called Wanda. That's a heist movie.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I didn't.
I
so
actually
it
can't
doesn't
remember.
count.
I can't remember what we.
Ross isn't there.
Ross, you're irrelevant. You're like the podcast intern. Shut up and know your place.
If that was the case, you wouldn't have begged me to come on this show with you guys. Ross, the views are tanking.
Can I
please
verbatim,
save us, Ross? Okay, guys.
verbatim just refer to the exact conversation that occurred. Hey, Ross, we're going to watch Mortal Kombat this week for the podcast. Do you want to come on the episode? Oh yeah, I'd really like to do that. Yeah. Oh guys, can I come on the podcast every week? That's how it went.
Yeah. I was being humble because I knew how much you needed this. You're welcome.
And not unlike a bank crew taking down, carrying out a heist. Look at that segue. We all came together.
Yeah, Clive Owen was there. Jodie Foster for some reason. It's all very, very confusing.
Very nice of it to turn up. Yeah. So we're doing Inside Man. This is a film that I'd seen maybe 7-8 years ago, and when I think Dave, you suggested we watch this, I was like, oh cool, this is a fun film. And I really remember liking this. Like, this is one of those films, fantastic, great performances and just a cool story you don't see coming. Watching it a second time, maybe I've changed, but I really kind of struggled with this film in quite a lot of ways that I wasn't really expecting, and it was an interesting experience for me, because usually if I like a film, that's it. But this was different. It was very different the second time around for me.
Yeah, I sort of see what you mean, Sam. I've seen this film loads, and I really like it. However, I will just say before we go any further, if anyone's watching this or we're listening to this later on, we are going to spoil the plot of this any second now. And it's kind of maybe the first movie we've done where like the plot turn is not like dire to the enjoyment of the movie, but I do think that like it's certainly a part of watching this for the first time is like getting to see the plot, the plot reveals as they happen. So if you haven't watched this and you care at all about that, then we shouldn't tell people to stop listening or stop watching. So keep listening and keep watching, and then just shut the fuck up about it.
If Inside Man has been on your bucket list for 15 years, I'd argue you've got other things on.
Yeah, like you're probably not that fussed. Yeah,
yeah. So with that, let's crack on.
Yeah, Sam, give us a plot summary.
Right, so in Inside Man, as I go to the page that has the plot summary on,
the bank that couldn't not be robbed.
Stalling.
A police detective, a bank robber, and a high-powered broker enter high-stakes negotiations after a criminal's brilliant heist spirals into a hostage situation. I know. It is like in a lot of ways, it's a very, very typical classic heist movie, and it's definitely like leaning on all of the heist tropes. We get the people in mass, we get the get on the fucking floor, all of that stuff. Like the whole thing is dripping with heist movie paraphernalia.
Can I just take issue with that description just for a second? apart from the reveal we, the audience, get right at the end, at what fucking point is this a brilliant heist gone awry?
Yeah, well,
Like,
yeah.
they go into a bank with a load of guns and take a load of hostages. That happens like every other day in America. That's fairly like...
But
no, you're confusing banks for schools, Dave. So
oh, Jesus.
You're right.
the bank is things that people actually care about. The school is not.
Are we going to get cancelled in America? Probably not shot, though,
Let's make sure that people understand that we're commenting on the ludicrous nature of gun control in America, and we're not advocating or supporting school
all
shootings.
acts thereof.
Yes. So it's...
Speak for yourself, Sam. No.
Ross, you have a job, man.
Yeah.
I'm Ross Griffith, and I support Sam's message.
It is. But I know what you mean, Dave. There is a certain level of like uncontrolled activity, and generally everything's going to Clive Owen's plan, isn't it? And he's the main bank robber that we get to see.
Clive Owen is a really like poor man's Liam Neeson, isn't he?
Oh, I will not have a word said against Clive Owen. I
like Clive Owen, but he's never really gotten to the A-list, has he? He's like
Children of Men.
I would agree with that, Dave.
Children of Men is a quality film. Which
I'm not saying he hasn't done amazing films, Sam, or really good work. What I'm saying,
you, Dave.
What I'm saying is that Clive Owen has
Let's all take a breath here.
Despite having quite an impressive and varied career with lots of decent roles, like Clive Owen doesn't seem like he would be anyone's first choice for an action movie. Like, which is bizarre because that's all he does.
He's a good supporting actor, isn't he? Yeah.
I rate Clive Owen fairly highly. You know, higher than Orlando Bloom. That's right, Orlando. You can't escape me.
We're not done with you yet.
Yeah.
You're in one.
To be fair,
Previous episode, Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's a callback for our fans there. I mean, I was going like Orlando Bloom. The best thing, I saw with Clive Owen was the Christmas special episode of Extras. And basically, in this scene, he was having he was having a sex scene with one of the women. He was picking out one of the extras, and basically, they were picking women that weren't to his liking. And then the final straw then was they got a woman who again wasn't objectively attractive, and his response was, "Oh, fuck off! I'm fucking Clive Owen."
Yeah, he's very good.
It was brilliant.
We also get, like the MVP. He is just great in almost every film he's in, and his ability to carry a crap movie and turn it into something really, really good.
I'm going to posit that Denzel Washington is probably... There's an argument. I know, I am ruining your joke. But
I love Willem Dafoe.
I knew it was going to be Willem Dafoe. I knew it was going to be Willem Dafoe. I'm something of a podcaster myself.
You see. But I think Denzel Washington is legitimately maybe one of our greatest living leading men.
Absolutely.
Like, genuinely.
No one's going to argue that. No one is going to argue that.
Except racist, Ross. And they're wrong. Denzel Washington is phenomenal. And he's a big part of why I enjoy this movie as much as I do. Because, his character he is having fun. Do you know what I mean? He's a guy who enjoys what he does. And he just lives in a role. And I really enjoy watching that.
There's a thing that Denzel Washington does in every movie, and I imagine it's ad-libbed at the time. He does this thing where he grabs his head and starts scrunching his head up and down, like he's frustrated. He's kind of "Whoa, okay," and he does it all the time. And it's one of those things that I just love as a piece of detail that he brings to movies. He brings character detail in a way that I think probably no other leading male actor does. You've got your Harrison Fords and all this stuff, but they're pretty in a line. Denzel Washington is just he just elevates everything he's in. That Unstoppable. Unstoppable, the one about with Chris Pine, the train that won't slow down. I mean, it's just fucking
I've
terrible.
got a worse one, Sam. I've got a worse one. He was in one of his earliest roles was Heart Condition opposite Bob Hoskins. I'm just going to tell you the plot of this movie because we are definitely doing it for the podcast if I have to send you both DVDs. Bob Hoskins is a racist cop who was sleeping with this prostitute. She leaves and she ends up she's now sleeping with Denzel Washington, who's a lawyer. Denzel Washington, they know each other. Denzel Washington gets shot and killed. And Bob Hoskins has a heart attack on the same day because he's a fat racist cop. And he gets Denzel Washington's heart. And then him and Ghost Denzel Washington solve Denzel Washington's murder.
top quality. Top quality.
It's-
And
I think you've referenced that movie in a previous episode as well, Dave.
because I can't quite believe it exists. Like, it doesn't sound like Denzel Washington and Bob Hoskins were acting at the same time for a start. Like, that's a real end of his career and beginning of Washington's career. And the plot is insane. And, like, it's really risky to have your main character be a fucking racist fat cop who has a heart attack and that be the start of your movie.
I mean, maybe it didn't start out that way. Maybe it's just like when they reviewed this movie. Wow, this guy's kind of racist. We'll put the marketing like that.
let's come back to the rest of the cast because there are some other people. Let's maybe go through as we start with this.
No one in this movie is noteworthy.
Well, we'll talk about Jodie.
Willem Dafoe, and I'm joking. I'm joking.
It is a crazy cast, but let's go through it rather than just listening up front because I want to start off talking about the first shots of the movie. The first shots of the movie is we get a great
New York.
Well, I was talking about the Clive Owen one. So we see Clive Owen speaking to us, directly breaking the fourth wall, talking to us as the audience and saying, I'm Clive Owen, I'm cool, and I'm going to only tell you once, and I never repeat myself, even though he does throughout the movie.
Several times.
Yeah. But there's the bit in this is that confuses me is why they show us at the very, very start of the film the scene with him in the cell, like him enclosed inside the building, where he's now. Because I think what's the best thing about the best heist movies that we watch? It's about tension. It's about raising the stakes, raising the tension, and straight away this film's like. Number one, Clive Owen is alive because he's telling you this after the fact. Like, it's retroactive. We also know that he's inside somewhere. The film's called Inside Man, but we know that he's kind of barricaded in. And I'm pretty sure when I first watched this, that I kind of understood.
I think
that
they're
he
trying
was
to
in the bank. Like, he's in the bank, and that's what I understood.
I think the shot there is supposed to be interpreted as him being in prison or in the bank. And I think I don't think it's well shot enough, but it's very dark and it's like he's supposed to be in darkness. And the idea is, I think like he's in he's in a cell. And obviously then the reveal at the end that he is hidden in the walls of the bank is supposed to be a bit of a reveal. I'm not sure that I don't think that passes over very well, but is what it is. Ross?
But I think it's a real problem with the start of this movie because I think it sucks all the tension out of the film.
I don't think so, Sam. And the reason I think it actually works well is because, when he's describing, it could be a prison cell or it can be a cell of your mind. I'm paraphrasing there. But I got the feeling that they were trying to paint this as, he's actually in a prison cell now. Do you know what I mean? So, like, trying to fool the audience into, I got caught. And then, as you go through the movie, he doesn't get caught. Wait a minute.
But he's reading. He's reading. He's got a bed. He's doing press
prisoners
ups.
aren't allowed to read or have beds. They have to sleep outside on the ground.
No, but he doesn't look like a prison cell. He's not in prison. He's quite
No, but it's supposed to be, like you say, Sam, like, we all got what they were trying to say, but I do agree that they could do a better job of it.
Yeah. But I just think there's a real issue throughout the film, though. There's a real issue throughout the film as we say goodbye to Ross. The biggest thing for me is that as you go through the movie in heist movies, you've got to be able to keep everyone aware of what's going on, but also you need to be able to like them understand what the stakes are in each individual bit. Like, there's a lot of confusion. It's very complicated in terms of different people and characters, and we're going to do this and that. But you need to be able to keep those stakes high. You need to be able to keep the tension high throughout the film. And it just doesn't exist. The other example is that they show us the Nazi documents pretty early on. And again, I'm like, why are we seeing this? Why are you telling us now? Tell us when, at the end, because otherwise, all of the stuff we know about Plummer is answered very, very significantly earlier than it should be because
I don't necessarily disagree with you, Sam, but can we maybe tackle this as we go through?
Let's
and
go
we can
through,
talk about actual examples of where there could be more tension as opposed to, like, you quite legitimately just railing on the fact that this scene.
Yeah.
For me, especially the first time I watched that didn't necessarily like rob it of any tension. But I do see what you mean. So obviously Ross will return when he returns. So we have after that we kind of have like your more traditional heist movie setup, don't we? We have the odd scene of the van picking everyone up. Couldn't you meet at one location and get in the van? But the van's picking everyone up for school or whatever. They drive to the bank and they hold it up basically, don't they? They get out and we don't really see anyone's faces. Like it's kind of a thing in this movie where it's very unclear for big chunks of it who the robbers are, apart from Clive Owen, who obviously we see multiple times.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty solid intro. Otherwise, once we get past the tension killing, we get to basically introduce them, and this is very traditional bank robbing stuff. Like this is get on the ground and all that. The shooting.
Well, we meet some of the customers, don't we, and some of the employees. And
yeah.
I couldn't tell you the names of any of these characters, but like we do get some nice sort of like the Asian guy checking out the woman's tits, and we get like the security guard and the manager. We get we learn a little bit about these characters before the robbery, not long before, but
it's where I think the success of this film is that it's also a kind of like retrospective thing, isn't it? So we get to see stuff that's happening live, as in this is happening right now on the screen. And then we cut forward in time to the interrogation scenes where we get to see Denzel Washington interrogating basically all the characters that we see, including some of the robbers, but we obviously don't know that. Like, I think that's cool because it really means that you're questioning, like, why are they saying to this clearly unconnected guy who's not involved and had a heart attack, why are they saying, did you rob the bank? And they're like, you get some great performances from Denzel Washington and
Chiwetel
Ejiofor, yeah, who early role for him, but now obviously like megastar.
He is the perfect actor for that role. Let's talk about him just for a second now, because like he fills that role, but he never once like takes anything away from Washington's performance.
Yes.
Like in such a perfect way. He's the absolute like peak sidekick. He's good. You want to watch him do stuff. You're interested in him, but he doesn't pull focus. It's, I think, a really technically impressive performance, and maybe partly down to the writing as well.
Absolutely, it's a great character, isn't it? Because it is there to support. Washington, and he never really pulls focus. But the interventions that he does make, I think, are really good. And obviously, there's a good.
They've gone back and forth. Like I'd watch a series about Denzel Washington and Chiwetel Ejiofor, like doing bank hostage negotiations. Like I'm there for that. Yeah, I'll watch 15 seasons of that.
That would be great.
Even if it's just mostly them eating burgers, like I'm there for it.
He's excellent. Yeah. The way the actual mechanics of the bank robbery, I think, are pretty good. Now, obviously, they're doing something a little bit cleverer than what we first get to see, but the initial thing of go in, everyone on the ground, don't touch the phones, get away from that button, all this stuff. They lock the doors, and then they throw smoke, and the smoke starts seeping out. Now, the first thing I was like, why did you do that? Like, that's stupid. Why did you put the smoke down? Like that's so silly, because now everyone's going to know that you're there.
They accidentally pressed the right button, Sam. It can't be helped. Yeah. We'll do it.
Obviously, this is what they want. And I think the film does a pretty good job of, like, they talk about how delaying for time. The police are delaying for time initially because they want to be able to understand what's going on. Oh no, we're not going to call him yet. We're not going to talk to him yet. We'll let him sweat a bit. And Clive Owen, it turns out, they realise, is delaying for time as well. And so we get this because he wants to, dig a hole in a wall. What's interesting, and then becomes a little bit frustrating for me, is that the whole film is kind of delaying for time a little bit. They've set up all of these tropes. They've got them in the bank robbery, and from someone who's never seen it before, that you would think, all right, so it's going to be a bank robbery, but there's going to be something. We have seen that a little bit at the start, which for me would have given it away, but perhaps not. And this is good because it means that you get to see the mechanics of all the police doing their thing, and in the bank robbery, them swapping out the the terrorists, the
It's
bank robbers.
it's
Just
interesting
two
because
seconds.
like
They swap out the bank robbers with the hostages, all that stuff, and then it becomes, I feel like they're just pulling it out a little bit too far. Like I feel like there's a good 20 minutes that you could get rid of in this film, and you'd maybe resolve some of that that tension that they have built up a little bit quicker. I don't know if you agree.
possibly. I think there's enough going on throughout that like I get what you mean, and I do think that especially with them robbing the bank, it's clear to us, the viewer, a bit too quickly that they aren't trying to rob the bank. And I don't mean obviously because they are after something, but like they throw the smoke, and I think the film could maybe have been a bit better in having us believe, maybe up until Denzel Washington discovers the audio, maybe having us believe until then that these people were just trying to rob this bank and something went wrong. I think that maybe gives you like a stronger basis for it, and then we, the audience, get to go say, what are they up to then if they aren't trying to rob the bank?
Yes.
And we do get some odd scenes sprinkled throughout this where like it's unclear why they're doing it. So obviously, what we know. So obviously, everyone's seen the movie. So Clive Owen has assembled this ragtag group of bank robbers. You know, he's found them on Facebook or whatever, because he knows that there are these diamonds and these written records of Nazi war crimes.
Oh, we'll come to that. We will come to that.
In this bank. It's very clear that Clive Owen knows what's in this safe deposit box. So how the fuck did he find that out? And so, but like that is okay. That's fine because they need to get into the bank and rob it and do that. So what we know that they go to the bank. They have this plan to disguise all the hostages as in the same clothes as the bank robbers, so that they can blend in. And we get to see some of that. Some of it's about ham-fisted. But like you are right, there's a bit of a sag where this would have been the time to explain all of that, but instead we get that pretty much straight away. And then obviously there's them digging a hole in the bank. I didn't quite understand what that was about because
can I tell you the point?
Again.
Yeah, can I tell you the point? Which is obviously the point when we realise is when they discover that they have been listening for several hours. Albanian, former president of Albania ranting about communism.
I think this is one of the funny. This is one of my favourite bits in the movie.
Really?
Hear me out here. It's funny. Like, it's a good choice. Albanian, like, it's a small country. There are probably a very small amount of people in, you know, the police department in New York can get in touch with who speak Albanian. That seems like enough for me. I've listened to other podcasts about this movie in the past. There's one, We Hate Movies. They're from New York. And they said that this scene is incredibly, believable. The scene in the van where they just start playing this audio on the loudspeaker and they ask the crowd this. They've never seen anything quite so New York as that, which really gets me every time.
It is good.
So they have this. They know that there's things playing, and they're listening to it. By the way, on the microphones they put in the pizza boxes, and they have the scene, and the woman comes in, and we get nice character moments with Chiwetel and with Denzel and even with Defoe. Like it's a nice scene with the three of them reacting to this totally mad Albanian woman with all her parking tickets.
But so all this works, and this is perhaps a symptom of just dragging it out a little bit too long for me, because we get this fairly early on. The food is one of the first things that happens, and we're obviously going to bug the food, which is cool. It's that must be a realistic thing that they do in these situations. Now, that's all good, but it's clearly a recording of a speech. Like it's clearly a recording of someone ranting about, and then we will crush the dissenters with our might, and you can hear and there's no conversation there. It's literally just one person monologuing in quite an oratory. Nobody thought for a second, surely they're playing a tape. Like, there's all these things, and I think this is a symptom of just the film taking one idea, and it is funny, and I love the bit when she comes in and she's like, you sold my parking tickets, I'll translate this for you. Like, that's a great, and it feels very New York, doesn't it? This kind of, New
No one
York
has a car in New York.
So, but I just, it's like a bit of a hole for me. I think it is a bit of a hole in that nobody noticed that this was just somebody ranting away. And from there, they kind of realize that this is not just your regular bank robbery. That this is a bit more sophisticated. So the whole movie kind of turns on them realizing that they've been fucked over by these now cleverer than they thought bank robbers. And that to me just seems a little bit of a stretch. It seems a stretch to go from, we'll just give them pizza, it'll be fine, and we'll put the bugs in, and then, oh, wait a minute, these guys know what they're doing. There's
a really easy fix for it. It's like we only got 2 minutes of audio, and then the mic stops transmitting, and then that's the clip they have. That would maybe, again, like, I think it's one of these, and this isn't an excuse, and I do say it every week, but like, it's one of these things about suspension of disbelief. And if you buy it and you're just kind of like in the scenes, I agree that logically, like, if you think about some of these things in greater depth, like, what the fuck is happening? But if you're just watching a movie, like, I think it does enough. I think it's like, I didn't have a problem with this scene. And again, I've seen this movie multiple times in terms of like thinking, oh, well, how did they not figure that out? It's enough, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's one of, and this is my thread throughout this kind of review of this movie, is it's one of the poorer screenplay choices. And I think that's most of my problem from this film comes from the screenplay just being a little bit just like at one time very, very complicated, and at the same time like underdeveloped in quite a few key ways. What we get to see on screen, the direction, I think, is excellent. Like, and all of the other stuff, the Albanian thing, but you get a woman from the street in, like, that's a great choice. It's a great choice, and it's all done brilliantly. So that would be one of my first examples of where I think there's poor screenwriting is that Albanian.
Can I ask, Sam, before we get any further, obviously with Ross having had to go away on assignment all of a sudden, like, I realise obviously, like, this is much more of an in-depth discussion, but did you enjoy this movie? Like, I know obviously the podcast changes how we view a movie, but like, did you enjoy the physical act of sitting and watching this movie, or were you sat thinking, what the fuck is David making me watch this week?
Jeez,
well, it is. A movie is like an experience. And
so yes, I did, and I was again, when I watched it initially, I was like, well, this is a really cool film. Like, not incredible, but like a really like well made, fun movie. The second time, like, I was up until we kind of probably the scene where everyone rushes out of the bank, like, and then after that, I felt like it just dragged and dragged and dragged. But it's still enjoyable. It's enjoyable, but I think the problem comes, and I hope it's not
the conclusion of this movie is really weak. I feel we can get into that. Like, any tension the movie does have is ultimately dispersed when they tear gas the hostages,
and that's So the bits that I do like are really cool. And I hope it isn't pedant cast to say so, but there's a few things in here that I think are big enough plot holes for you to fall into.
Well, let's talk about them then, shall we? So we get let's talk a little bit more about Denzel Washington's hostage negotiator just for a second, because his life looks bleak as fuck. So we meet him and we get a few details that, like, and I'm not quite sure about this, but there was some like case he worked on where 120 grand went missing, and he's somehow still at work doing his job. Number one, America, you've got problems. Like, and it's the movie never really comes down on whether he stole this money or not. Like, I don't think so, but the movie never says that.
Well, they say they found it. They say they found it, don't they?
No, they don't. They don't. They've never found the money. Oh, they say they found it, but that's
they say they found it, but
Jodie Foster fixed it.
That's the implication. That's the implication. So it's like, so is this guy a dirty cop? Like, is that what we're saying?
Given the way he lives, I think like it's relatively clear that he didn't steal this money
with his girlfriend's brother
yeah,
in his house, listening to them bang. Like, it's not an optimal situation if you're 140k.
no. But we get some nice like the only reason he gets the call up to, and obviously you're a hostage negotiator, right? Like it's a funny like. Not subversion, but he's not like, oh yeah, hostage negotiation, fantastic. He's like, oh my god, we've got a case. We never get to go out and do hostage negotiation. And it's him and Chiwetel being like, the main guy is on holiday, he's on vacation. So the captain's like, right, well, you'd better fucking go. Oh, but what about that thing? Shouldn't I be suspended or potentially in jail? And the captain's
he says, I'm in the doghouse, aren't I? And then the captain says, yeah, I'm throwing you a bone.
Again, like one of the things I think the Spike Lee of it really comes through in the dialogue, in that like it never feels, it's funny and it's quite clippy. It never feels forced though. Even like, especially the Denzel and Chiwetel and the police conversations, none of it ever feels like anyone's reading lines. And boy, is that an achievement in a movie, and it shouldn't have to be, but it is. It totally is.
Yeah, and this cast does a great job of doing that all, don't they? You know,
yeah.
The scripted words, I think, are absolutely. You know, I think it's fine. I think
you are right though, Sam. I think that the plot holes do weaken it, and I think that it's going for something with the fourth wall breaking and with the flashing back and forward, because we haven't really been clear. Like the flashing forward is when we're watching the heist go on, and then we're seeing Denzel Washington and Chiwetel Ejiofor like interview the hostages, and we see. Some flash forwards of obviously the hostages that are still in the bank in the, as we watch it.
The biggest, it's perhaps not a plot hole, but it's a plot contrivance, I think, and I think I struggle with it quite a lot.
Let's talk about Jodie Foster.
Well, no, we will, but let's talk about Christopher Plummer first, because this is like a.
Would you like me to arrange you one?
Yeah, this is a great actor who is. Who does a really serviceable job in this. I think it works, and he's intriguing and quite charming, and also a war criminal, and like it all wraps up into one. Now, the problem I have, number one, this guy was old enough in World War II, 1945-ish, to be able to exploit the Holocaust for his own personal gain. So. How old he is, it's kind of very unclear. He's maybe acting a little bit up, but still, I was like, so how old should he be? And like, he doesn't look. He's still the chairman of the board, and he'd be in his 80s or even his 90s, depending on the age he was that he'd do this.
Does this film take place in 2007 though? Is the question.
I don't know, but again, that's not necessarily my problem with him. My problem is that this guy is so terrified of his past being outed. Like, he's so terrified of his
maybe
war criminal.
Don't keep physical documents implicating you in war crimes
in
a box.
Just
generally.
Not just physical documents implicating you in war crimes from World War II. Physical documents implicating you in war crimes from World War II with massive fucking swastikas on them. And like, it seems to me... It seems to me an exceptionally poor choice of judgment to have these documents, retained. I don't care what bank that you're working. I don't care. Nothing would.
I tell you what it needs to be, Sam. And they kind of do it with The Ring. This needs to be Hitler's tiara. Now, not Hitler's tiara, because obviously, he maybe didn't have one. This needs to be though some like, really expensive, like priceless piece of art. It needs to be a stolen Nazi painting, or like a better MacGuffin, I think, of like, vague Nazi documents that implicate you in crimes is a bit much. But I think if it was, this is the crown jewels of such and such that Hitler would, the last place they were seen was Hitler's possession, like, that would maybe be enough to be like, oh, well, that's the reason he's kept them, is because he's greedy and because, it's worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Whereas, like, paperwork with fucking swastikas on it. Not worth anything, like that. You can't trade in those stocks if they're stocks, like, and that could be the only value.
And we do explore later on a lot. We hit some of his guilt with Jodie Foster, and we'll talk about Jodie Foster in a second, because these two connect, and there's a fix that I think would improve this. He is obviously slightly repentant about the fact that he literally says that I could have saved my friends, and instead I took this Cartier diamond ring.
The line is, I sold my soul to the Nazis, and I've been trying to buy it back ever since. And it's an interesting sort of exploration of morality there, because you've got Denzel Washington, who is your like lawful good as far as this movie is concerned. You've got Clive Owen, who, like, depending on how you look at it, is more of your like chaotic good, because like he doesn't want to hurt anyone. And I think that and I think, Christopher Plummer, like, where does he come down on? Is he lawful evil? Like, it's very much like it doesn't delve as much into the Nazi war crimes. If your movie has Nazi war crimes in it, I kind of want to not see them, but I kind of want to hear more about them. It needs to be a bigger plot.
Yeah, and it needs to not just be his these documents. Like, have him be a much more enigmatic figure. Have him be someone who is beloved. Not just a banker as well. The fact that he's a banker, I think, completely against. Just like, what the fuck? I mean, it's 2007, so maybe we haven't all, we haven't tried to hate bankers as much.
2006, Sam. This is pre-financial crash. No, not that one. The one in 2008.
Yeah, the first of the two that we've lived through.
Two at the time of this recording.
So
COVID, we'll get you.
So there's this. Then the other element, and connected very closely to Chase, Case, is Jodie Foster's character, and she Madeline White, she manages. So first off, great performance, Jodie Foster, top quality actress, just great in everything. She has this amazing shit-eating grin on her face the entire movie, like, it's beautiful. But I kind of, in terms of how we fix this film, because she's doing like his dirty work, and then, with a little bit of confrontation at the end, she's like, well, I'm not very impressed by you, but I'll take your money, thank you very much. I kind of want Jodie Foster to be the antagonist in this movie, because in terms of like your antagonist protagonist roles, Denzel's obviously the protagonist, but there's a kind of grey area with Clive Owen, I think. And
I wouldn't have even. I don't think this movie has a protagonist in the traditional sense, because like Clive Owen's who we hear from the first. We see a lot of Clive Owen doing stuff. I think for large bits of this movie, Denzel Washington is our point of view. And I think he's definitely the closest thing, but I would argue that this is kind of maybe why like some of the plot holes are more obvious in this movie, because it doesn't follow, and it's trying to not follow like the traditional tropey like movie metrics. It's trying not to have like this is Denzel Washington, he's a working schlub and blah 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 blah. Yeah. Oh look, it's trying to kind of like reject some of that, and like Spike Lee does this every now and then, and like. As a very prominent and well-known director, like he has a bit more scope to do that, and
that's I think you're right.
I'm not sure I want Jodie Foster to be the evil thing. I think there's legs.
Well, hold on, let me set it out.
Being evil.
Yeah, let me set it out, because this would be my fix. Because as we go through the film, basically the whole movie circulates around the fact that Case Plummer was a war criminal. Clive Owen's not impressed by this. He doesn't like it. How he finds out about it, we don't know. But anyway, that all progresses, and then at the end of the movie, Clive Owen takes the documents, say, I've got this proof, and I'll release it at some point if you try and fuck with me. And he leaves the diamond ring for Denzel to follow. Fine, okay, convoluted, but whatever. To me, though, the better fix, the better antagonist of this film is Jodie Foster. So what I would do to just remove some of the complications from this and give us more Jodie Foster time, although I think she was only on set for a very short time, so that's probably why, is you make Jodie Foster the antagonist, and you make the relationship between Jodie Foster and Clive Owen. Have those two be the ones that get to butt heads properly, because she's an accessory. She's not really given a lot to do. She has one scene in the bank. She has one scene, like in the diner at the end, and she's a scene. She has the stuff at the start with Plummer. She's barely used, and I think if you have Clive Owen is a disgruntled eco warrior or something like that, because they don't steal any money.
They hate Nazis, eco warriors.
Yeah, but they don't steal any money. And then Jodie Foster is a professional seal clubber, and she's basically gone round and.
Do they measure that metric in how many seals you can club in how many seconds, or is it like how many of those that you kill?
Cumulatively, I think it is.
Yeah, it's like per hour, do you reckon, or
but
per minute?
She has abused.
What's the endurance on that?
Yeah, exactly. She's used her influence and her power to basically get some pipeline done or destroyed rainforest, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be eco, but just have some grievance between the two, and then you can make the outing much more significant, and then you can get almost like a Terry Benedict moment in Ocean's 11, where this poor guy gets his bank robbed, and we all love it. Because he's a bastard. We just don't like him. We just hate him because of the way he looks and the way he acts and all this.
I don't necessarily hate this suggestion, Sam. I'm really unclear as to why anyone's robbing a bank in that situation.
But that doesn't fix the problem. It could be the same principle. It could be, it could be in secret documents, or it could be something that implicates Jodie Foster. Whatever the MacGuffin is kind of relevant. In fact, let's be really clever and make it completely irrelevant what's in the case. Let's make it literally a MacGuffin where we don't know what's in case 392. And I think you do that, you strip away so much of all of the other stuff and the Nazi stuff and blah 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 blah, and the film becomes just substantially easier to understand, and you don't have to rely on all of these contrivances to get to the same purpose.
I can't say that I agree, to be honest. For a very good reason. Now, why I disagree, I think because, that's fine for a movie starring these characters, like this cast portraying these characters, but it's a heist movie, and, for all its other flaws and the plot contrivances, the heist movie aspect of it is, it's trying to sort of lull you into thinking time and time again, this is going to be a classic sort of heist. So we have... They break into the bank. Oh, they're going to rob it. Oh, no, they're not robbing it. Oh, they've got all these outfits for the other guys. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, they're digging a hole in the floor. We'll come back to that because this is a plot point that they show you and then never, ever once return to. So you have all of that. And basically the contrivance is the plan was exactly what happened. Clive Owen was going to rob this bank. He needed time to set up his little cubby hole. He needed time to sow all of this trickery with the police and the confusion. He needed time to get into this box and steal, because what he was actually after was this bag, all these diamonds in this safe deposit box. Now, if we ignore the Jodie Foster character just for a second, the idea here is that he knows if the police storm the bank, they can't identify the robbers. If nothing's been stolen and nobody's been killed, then the police aren't going to... Do you know what I mean? No one's going to be really invested. There's no crime. No body, no crime. And so that's kind of the thing there, is that he knows he can get these diamonds and if he can hide himself, because obviously with dealing with the police, he would be too recognizable. If he can hide himself, as he does, he can have these diamonds and he can get away. And really the outing this, Nazi profiteer is just kind of icing on a cake. He feels like he should. For me, that's a bit of a weakness, but that's the idea.
I thought that was his whole purpose of going in.
No, he wants the diamonds.
He wants the diamonds, but he's also very clear that he's going to use the documents and the ring, to point to.
But he doesn't do that. Now, hear me out here. He gives it to Denzel because I agree with you, because he believes that he will do the right thing. However, he doesn't actually do it himself. So that's a lot of risk.
It's true.
And whereas Denzel could take this big diamond ring, get it cut and pawned or whatever, and never ever mention it again. And so Clive, this is what it comes down to: is they are trying to rob this bank, not in the conventional way, and in a very clever way, so that they won't be basically caught or pursued. Because they could have smashed and robbed this bank and gone, but they'd have been caught because the police put a real premium on catching violent bank robbers. Whereas when they can't really tell what crime is being committed or who's done it, and nobody's like, the captain says at the end, he's like, listen, nobody's on my ass to solve this. I'm not going to make you guys solve it. Bury it. And like, it just goes in the unsolved crimes. And that is the plan. That is the bank robbery plan. Clive Owen and his gang get all these diamonds. They have gotten monetary gain. This guy's a Nazi. That might be fuck him. We can rob him. But if they were that bothered, then the plan would be, we need the world to know this guy's a Nazi.
And that I think is maybe where the difference. You're right. For if you implement what I've suggested and make it less about the diamonds and more about the political impact, then it's not really about the heist anymore. I mean, it'd be an added benefit, wouldn't it? And they'd maybe steal a few tens just to keep going. You also, but please, I mean, just take something. You may as well.
Hundreds, Sam. They have $100 bills in America.
Yeah,
and people spend them. It's not like £50 notes here, where you literally have to get arrested to spend a £50 note. Criminal.
The probably the best bit of the movie for me, though, and you've mentioned it, is the point where they have this fake execution, which forces the police to like, right, let's do it, come on. And they go in there, guns blazing, blah, blah, blah. And they have this great setup plan because everyone's in the same outfit. So they put all the hostages with masks on. They've also been rotating bank robbers into the hostages so that there's a sense of like...
Well, they keep them all in separate rooms, don't they? There's lots of shouting and they want everyone to keep their masks on at all time. I kind of, again, it could be done maybe a little bit more in a more nuanced way, but it's to like show that they're trying to sow confusion, which pays off later in the movie.
Because the bank robbers could take off a mask and say, "Oh, I'm so scared, I'm terrified," and everyone's like, "Well, no." And this is what they say later on, and this is where we get to meet the two kind of timelines that we're seeing, because they release, basically just make everyone run outside as the police are charging in, which means that they're faced with just this crazy mass of people who look exactly like bank robbers but are all screaming and saying, "I'm not a bank robber, I'm not a bank robber." And the bank robbers themselves can do this. We then get to see, we then make the connection with our minds and say, that's why they're interviewing everyone, which we've seen kind of interspersed throughout. Now, this is the biggest plot hole for me. This is the biggest point where I go, what the fuck am I doing watching this? We've got Clive Owen now, at this point, has run away and is inside his little cubbyhole. He's all happy in there. He's got his shithole to crap into. He's got his...
Was that what that is?
Yes, it's for shit. They've got this war and peace stuff. They've got blah, blah, blah. He's all happy. He's good. And he's going to stay there for a week. If he had not aggravated Denzel Washington, pulled down his mask on many occasions to talk to us and say, if he'd not done any of these things and just kept all of it on, used a different accent, which he did at the start. He has a Russian-sounding-ish accent at the start, Eastern European. He could have just ran out with all of the others and got away with it just like his bank robbing colleagues did, because they're all there. We get the woman, the two guys who are interviewed. We see them getting interviewed by the police, and they're like, and they don't get pinned for it because they were also in the bullpens with the. So why doesn't Clive Owen just do the same thing? There's no reason for him to be out there now. Yes, he's got the diamonds, but I'm fairly sure he could have figured out ways of hiding the diamonds, and they're very, very small. Like
I get you, Sam, but I think it's more. I think it's a logical jump to be that because he's been the one speaking to the police, and because he's spoken to Jodie Foster, and he's spoken to Denzel Washington, and he's
unnecessarily.
I know, unnecessarily, but because he's done all that, that's a lot of what he's been doing is what's been buying time. Like by having Denzel in the bank, by having Jodie Foster in the bank, it gives him time to do whatever. Now, so the presumption is that right, well, we don't know who any of the other bank robbers are. We know there's a woman and 2 men and blah, blah, blah. But this Clive Owen looking motherfucker, no one in this bank looks like him.
But if he hadn't exposed himself now, maybe maybe you could say, well, he needs to hide the diamonds, but he doesn't walk out with an enormous stash. Like, he's got his stuff that he went in with to keep him there, food and etc., which I presume he wouldn't live by. But he could have stashed the diamonds somewhere. He could have taped them to the inside of a bin, which he then went and picked it up. Like, there's just so many different ways that you could get around. And for me, it's a big enough problem with the screenplay. It comes down to that big problem again of, like, there's a great idea for a movie here, and they just couldn't tie it up. How do we keep him in the bank? How do we keep him that he has to stay in the bank for a week,
as
a
fix, Sam. As a fix here, maybe we establish that Clive Owen, in that introduction, we establish that he is like a known person. We establish that he maybe used to work for the bank, or
he wants to steal large amounts of money, and so that he needs to be able to walk out with 2 briefcases.
He's established that he's got beef with the bank or plumber, or he's got some. Oh, that's that mad family who believe in the conspiracy. No, it's that's that mad guy who keeps trying to, keeps saying these things about this humanitarian, and like,
or Jodie Foster.
If you establish maybe that Clive Owen is somebody who, do you know what I mean, that what these people would know, then that's then right. If he's caught in this bank, and like, even if people say he was there, they're going to be like, obviously it was this guy who we know is an agitator and we know has problems with this bank. He's suspect number 1. Let's fucking keep him in solitary, and interrogate him until he cracks, because this is America and we can do what we like. And so maybe that's like a better fix that you could probably do in like a fairly nuanced fashion. Maybe the police figure out who he is. Maybe the Denzel going into the bank happens much earlier when he does see his face. And then that's why they hide him behind the wall. But like, you are right. I think maybe, again, I don't think it's a terminal problem with this movie in terms of enjoying it. But I do agree that it could be handled better. Again, there's quite a lot of this script that is a bit heavy-handed with stuff.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to Russell Gurwitz, who wrote the screenplay, and there's maybe just like an extra level of refinement that needs to come, so that we can really, what's that thing about movies is if the suspension of disbelief is broken for you. Now, granted, I have seen this before, but it was a long, long time ago, so I couldn't really remember most of the details, just the ending. So I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that actually we shouldn't be thinking about this type of stuff, that we should be able to really just immerse ourselves in a movie and not have to have this constant why is this happening, and all these questions.
Well, it's a problem with a script, especially a script like this, which is like trying to be clever. And I don't mean to be I don't mean to disparage other movies, but like heist movies, especially Ocean's 11, is like that's the mold that everyone is trying to fill. Chef's kiss. Like, a heist movie has to have, a good heist movie needs to have that turn where you, the audience, are, where the villain, the robber, proves they're cleverer than, the person being robbed. And this movie, I think it stumbles around that. Like, it does it, but it's kind of like a doing it thing. Sorry, you have to edit this bit out. So I think it manages it, but it's kind of like a, it's a bit tenuous. So maybe it could have done with a second pass. Like, right, how can we better shine a light on that? How can we better show people that? How can we better describe that? So by the time we get to the end and we have the turn, number one, you can't have your audience at the cinema on opening night see it coming, like if you'd shown them it in the first scene. And like, because
let's just stop again and talk about how stupid that is,
Yeah.
But
movies
anyway.
like this are about like a director or a writer showing you how clever they are. And
yeah,
I know it's not a heist movie, but The Prestige is the movie that I kept thinking of when I was watching this.
Yes,
in terms of like you do lose something, even watching Inside Man, having seen it before. And The Prestige is a great example of a movie that's pretty unwatchable if you know the ending. There's a twin, and
boom, huge spoilers for The Prestige. This is not a Prestige podcast. It's not unreasonable to expect that you wouldn't get spoilers for The Prestige, but there we go.
Fuck you.
I'll beep it.
You'll beep it. But like, but this I don't think is as earth shattering. And if it was like, oh my god, he's done that, like that's what you then go out of the movie thinking. Whereas in this movie, you go out thinking, like it's an enjoyable experience, but ultimately, like this is not a classic movie because of plot reasons. Because I think this is astonishingly well made and produced and performed.
Well, let's talk about these things that I think are well made and well.
Let's talk about the music. First and foremost, because I think the score of things is something that, for various reasons, mostly because of my musical illiteracy, we maybe talk about the least in movies. But I think this is really well scored.
Yes, and it's something that it's something that I do love. I do love a good.
Oh, I love it. I'm just stupid. I can't appreciate it.
Yeah, I quite like getting into it. I'm the type of person who listens to soundtrack, like movie soundtracks quite a lot, especially when working, because I
nerd.
Yeah. But also because I can't have any distraction. I can't have lyrics when I'm working, so I need stuff that's orchestral. And thank you, Lord of the Rings. You've got me through many boring tasks because of your.
You just listen to the Bath song on repeat.
Yes, how would you? But the music in this is Terence Blanchard, who is a jazz musician and trumpeter. And obviously, he's worked several times with Spike Lee, so it's a real mix. We get lots of there's Bollywood style kind of music that runs through this, and there's also these jazz trumpet hits, which like almost noiry,
absolutely
she
noiry,
walked in a room. And I knew that she was trouble. These type of,
especially the main theme, I think, that goes on over most of the movie. But it's even down to the general scoring. There's a fantastic bit, probably one of my favourite segments of the movies, is where Christopher Plummer can't help himself but come down to the bank.
Guilty.
So he guilty.
Whoever you are guilty. What are you doing?
Oh, you own 20 banks and you're down at this bank. What have you got in there then?
Yeah.
Is it child porn or what? What's going on? We've got handcuffs. We're going to take you away.
Something's bad.
Something's bad.
I mean, not Nazi war crimes bad. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, wait, unless it is. But he goes down to the mobile response unit that they've got, and he goes in, and obviously he's a big fucking deal in New York, is what we're told. So he goes in and he gets to meet the detectives, and he gets to meet Willem Dafoe, who we haven't really talked about a lot, who has a really odd supporting role in this movie, which I'm sure we'll get into. Yeah. So he gets to meet everyone, and he says, "Oh, well, how's it going? What do they want? Is there anything I can do?" And Denzel Washington goes, "Oh, well, they've this is the usual. They've asked for a jet to be fueled and ready to take off at JFK, and they want to take all the hostages with them, and blah blah blah." Anyway, he goes, "Oh, so yeah, they want this jet." And Christopher Plummer goes, "Would you like me to sort of get you a jet?" And they're like. It's a real mix of did this guy just offer to get us a jet like it was nothing? And does he not understand how hostage negotiation works?
Well, that's what he says. He says, "Sorry, I've obviously misunderstood."
But there's a soft score going on underneath the conversation, and when he says that, it stops, and we have beat of Denzel looking at Chiwetel, looking at Willem, looking at Christopher Plummer, and them all being like... And then Christopher Plummer says something, and the score drops back in. And I think that's so, it's just an example of how, obviously, the attention to details like that is really, really good.
Yes, and they do lots of they do lots of things here that, in a way that, from once you'll be looking at one scene with the cops, and they'll have this music playing behind them, and then they'll immediately switch to inside the bank, and there's another piece of music playing, especially in the kind of higher pace bits. There's no transition. It's just almost like a musical, delineation between the two. It's really cool. I think we should talk about music much more often. I'm going to try and lobby for that because I find it
I
fascinating.
will try and pay more attention. What it is that I'm fairly tone deaf, so I can appreciate music, but I really struggle to like have a technical conversation about it.
And that's good, because that's what good music should do. It should get in the background. It shouldn't, it should support what's there. Like Lord of the Rings, we got these leitmotifs which are, it's the Wraith song and all these other things. Yeah. But anyway,
or even Star Wars, which is traditionally quite like anything John Williams does as well.
Same principle, yeah. So other things that I like that are kind of more directory is the weird but also quite interesting 30-second or so interval that we get in this, which is a commentary on Grand Theft Auto and violent video games. Like the kid is playing on his PSP, a PSP 3000, which I actually have one of those, and it's fantastic modding console. I've got Pokemon on
I had one in 2007. 2006 when this came out. I think I had one of these. But I only ever played about 3. I had 2 UMDs, 2 movies.
Oh,
do you remember those movie cartridges? A mini disc in a captive housing that went in the back of a PSP.
Well, it was smaller than a mini
disc.
Kids,
we used to have this thing called physical media,
extraordinary,
and it was shit.
But they've recreated Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. That's what they've, and it's exactly the same. You've got the gun icon at the top. You've got the star system. And then he's going around shooting. This kid is playing Grand Theft Auto and shooting the other. There's 2 gangbangers or whatever that they're trying to.
I will say it's like a more violent. Like the game is egging you on. Like shoot him, kill him.
Yeah.
It's like you get points for going around shagging prostitutes and killing people on the street, but you lose points if someone steals your car or kills you. Obviously, I have toned that down for white person speak.
Yes,
but this is a Spike Lee movie.
There's lots of cool. I think it's an interesting bit. It does feel a little bit out of place in this movie because we're not really touching any of that, and there's a fair bit of violence throughout the film. But they're like, oh, we're totally fine with this violence, but if it's a video game, it does have a little bit of moral panic feel to me. Of like,
it's like they had a nice idea, but then they really had to crowbar it into the movie because the movie does sort of stop dead for this scene.
Calm down, Spike Lee. Okay, video games are fine. Maybe this kid shouldn't be playing that video game, just like you would be allowing and watching, to watch this film. But anyway, it's an interesting point, and it was all custom made as well. It's a custom made graphic and visuals that were done by. I actually don't have the company up here, but it doesn't matter. So that's fun. I think there's undertones there about, like, obviously because it's Spike Lee, social commentary about the kind of portrayal of gangsters and black gangsters and all this stuff that happens in a lot of these games, and how there's kind of lots of troubling things going on there that Spike Lee is interested in.
But like you said, the scene serves to show you that Clive Owen is chaotic good. Like, he is ultimately like a good dude.
Yeah.
Which is again like shown towards the end where they pretend to kill somebody in another attempt to like confuse the police and shroud the issue. Basically, in fact, before we talk about that, do you want to talk about what Jodie Foster does or doesn't do in this movie? Because that's probably like an interesting thing we did say we'd come back to, and we haven't.
Well, because she's to do.
She's a fixer.
This is my problem. Is she does? We're told many times by many characters that how great she is. That she is the one you go to, when you've been having sex with your secretary, and now it's all going to hit the press, and
you're a Nazi war criminal, and you don't want that to get out.
Just the casual stuff, just
you're Bin Laden's nephew, and you want to rent a house. That's a funny joke. That's like, wow, it's 2006.
Yeah, Bin Laden. And like, she gets to go into the bank and do again, like, what are we doing? I mean, this is not. Nobody would let this happen, and she wouldn't have any influence at all, and she doesn't have any influence. She goes in there. She walks out with her wonderful smirk again, not besmirching Foster because it's great, but it's so unearned. Like, she hasn't achieved anything.
She doesn't really have a lot to do. She goes in and she basically says, like, because again,
I'm a bank robber. I'm about to steal all the money. Like, I don't need
They're
you.
working on the assumption that these are just bank robbers, and that's kind of like the. I think it'd be a different movie if they weren't. So she's there on behalf of Christopher Plummer to say, like, listen, dude, obviously you found this document saying that this guy's a big Nazi. Fortunately, he used his Nazi war crimes to make lots of money. So you give yourselves up to the police. You destroy all of this stuff or put it back. You do, we'll make sure you get the minimum prison sentence. You come out $2 million right in your bank. Like, I get what she's trying to do, but it's kind of like you've asked a corporate fixer to go in and negotiate with, an ideologist and extremist, basically.
Yeah. Carry on.
So, like, you've. I think that's the problem. Is the movie doesn't shine a light on the fact that, like, she is out of her depth here, because this is not. She is used to, like, greasing people and, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
and it doesn't work.
And you can't grease this guy because he's got his own agenda that's irrelevant of making loads of money or keeping things quiet. He is the anti that, and the movie isn't interested in telling you that Jodie Foster's irrelevant.
Which gets to my point that this, I think maybe give her some more to do, and maybe my attempt to fix it that is one way. But so that doesn't really sell for me. In terms of some of the smaller details that we get through, because we've pretty much covered it. We can kind of talk about the end of the script and the end of the film in a minute, because I think it's poor and we should just maybe take that as a whole. But one of the small
Denzel Washington walking into that restaurant and slapping his dick on the table.
Oh yeah,
you're like, you're a Nazi. Great.
But one of the smaller details that I did like when is the guy who gets pulled out, the Sikh guy who's got a turban on. And some of immediately, as soon as the police see him, they're like, "Oh shit, he's an Arab!" And he's like, "I'm a Sikh. I'm like, obviously these cops have no idea what the difference is between a Sikh and an Arab. Like, they don't give a shit. They just basically like, is he? And like, has he got a bomb on him? And you're like, fucking hell. I mean, this is good social commentary for 2006, because we are like immersed in Islamophobia and all of this other stuff. Obviously, New York having implications and all this stuff, but I do think it's a fun piece of little bit of social commentary, which it's
a Spike Lee moment showing through in this movie that's quite devoid of Spike Lee things, and I think I really like this scene. Apparently there's an ad-lib line when they're in the, so this guy comes out of the bank, they beat him up basically because it's America and he isn't white. That's not me saying that. That's America doing that. So sort yourself out, America. Yeah. And they take his turban off, and obviously, like, if you know anything about like the Sikh religion, it's a big thing about the turban.
Yeah.
Covering their head is like a big part of their religion. And this guy sat with our cops in this cafe, and he's like, "Give me my turban back. I'm not talking to you. Just give me my turban back. I'm not a criminal. I'm the security guard at the bank. It's part of my religion. Give me my turban back." And like, I really don't understand the like, "Oh, well, we'll find it," blah blah blah. But there's a great Denzel's ad-lib scene where this guy's like, "Oh, well, did you ever try to like, rent an apartment or do anything like that, or get a loan or anything like, when you're a brown person in the US in 2006?" And Denzel's like, "I bet never struggled to get a cab though." And apparently this was an ad-lib line, and they almost couldn't use it because they almost couldn't edit out like all the directing, like the directors laughing in the background, because like it was just out of nowhere.
It's a
that's what you get with what you get there with Denzel, like added value.
Sharpness is good. And that thing like when Willem Dafoe is like, I didn't hear my officers say that. Like when they said that he's an Arab. Like I didn't hear that. And then the other detectives are like, well, you can find a complaint because they're not NYPD technically. The whole thing is very, again, it's a nice little bit of flavour to this movie, which you wouldn't, I don't think, get without that Spike Lee intervention.
It is saying something as well. Like it is quite.
It's entirely separate it's saying something entirely separate from the rest of the movie, of course.
Yeah.
So, which is a different thing, but it is at least making comment on that.
There's another moment with a cop that Denzel's talking to as well. A brief moment where this guy got shot, and what does he say? He says, "I'd rather die an old bigot than a handsome corpse." Which
yes, is excellent. Yeah,
yeah,
really
like a weird line, because basically he keeps using all these slurs. And Denzel Washington's like, "Man, can you stop with the color commentary? I don't need it."
Yeah, because it's there again as a bit of commentary about like NYPD cops and this, this very like typical NYPD cop, the type of.
Well, but the upshot of that conversation is kind of like it's a weird one, because this cop's basically saying like, "Oh, I got shot," and Denzel's like, "Oh, well, why did you get shot?" And he's like, and essentially the upshot of it was like, because he didn't want to shoot somebody, so he got shot. And it's like so that made you a racist?
Yeah.
It's a bit unclear.
I can believe it though. And again, Spike Lee, that's what he's gonna put those
where he lives, man.
Let's talk about the ending of this film. And for me, this has more false dawns than the end of Return of the King. Like there's so
really
many
long, isn't it?
It's really long. There's so many points.
This post-bank scene.
Is this the end of the movie? Oh, is this the end of the movie? And it's like just keeps progressively going and going. You're like, come on, please, I'm done now. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes. I'm done, please.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it doesn't really, I think, pay off anything. So the essential ending is that like the captain says, "Bury it." We're like, great. Denzel Washington's getting his promotion to Detective Grade 1. He is ecstatic about this, like he's won the lottery, when presumably this is like a, less than 20% increase on his wage. Anyway, apparently it means him and his girlfriend don't have to bang in the same apartment as the brother. We do get a lot of Denzel Washington and his girlfriend in this movie. So
cut this and save the runtime. Thank you very much.
So basically, Denzel decides he's going to go to the bank and, for whatever reason, to check something out. And he walks past Clive Owen, who's leaving the bank. Doesn't smell him because deodorant, I suppose. And Clive Owen sneaks something into his pocket, which we find later. He goes to the safety deposit box that doesn't exist. That's another one. Like, if you're hiding something in your safety deposit box, don't just like erase that number from the list, but leave the box in there. Like, oh, there's 193 doesn't exist. Like, there's 200 boxes, right? But we don't have 193. I wonder if something illegal's going on.
Just don't list the box at all. Have it.
Don't keep these Nazi documents
with the swastika on it. And your name that says, "I helped the Nazis."
The diamond ring, fine, but like fucking this signed confession from Hitler about how you helped him.
Thanks, bro. Cheers, Hitler.
Yeah, cheers, man, for helping me kill all those Jews. Best regards, Hitler.
It's just insane. It's insane.
So Denzel finds these things again. Like, Christopher Plummer hasn't gone and fucking got this box. Like, that's stage one. After they got into the bank and they're going to get my stash of like Nazi war documents.
It's been a week.
But he gets them, and he's then like, he's got the big diamond ring, he's got the Nazi war documents. So then we have a confusing men's club scene where Denzel goes and he bumps into Plummer and Foster. Or is it the mayor and Foster?
No. So firstly, he confronts Plummer, who is smooth and maybe he's bluffing, right? But he is completely relaxed about this whole situation until they bring out the ring. Even though it's been a week, he knows that those documents are gone. So he should be shitting it. Like, he should not be as relaxed and calm. And again, this is poor screenwriting. Like, come on. You need to give us the consequences of all the setup that you've been going for. He should be shitting it. And as soon as he sees that ring, he should be absolutely terrified. Like, and he's not. He's just like, all right, cool. And we never get to see the comeuppance, which I think is deserving of a Nazi war criminal, of a war profiteer. Like, we never get to see his
You need the warden scene from the end of Shawshank.
Oh yes.
You need them. You need not the Warden scene. Sorry, the Hadley scene. You need them putting him in the back of a car.
Well,
Like-
the warden one where he kills himself. I'm not suggesting he needs to kill himself, but he needs to have a moment where he knows he's fucked, and he doesn't know this at this point because they're just, oh, we're going to follow this ring. We're going to follow it. Don't you worry about it. They have no idea what's going on, but they know something. They know that something is there because Clive Owen wrote him a note saying follow the ring.
Yeah,
Again.
Denzel Washington leaves, and what he does is he opens a safe, and he's like, right, well, I best destroy all these love letters from Joseph Stalin just in case.
Just in case. Now I have another fix for this. I have another fix separate from the other Jodie Foster one. So there's a point where Jodie Foster and Clive Owen are talking, and Clive Owen says, I'm going to take these documents, I'm going to keep them as an insurance policy so you don't fuck me over. That's what he's going to do. So he's there to steal diamonds and all this stuff we've discussed. When we get to when Denzel gets to and Chiwetel get to the deposit box, it's just the ring there. I think a better fix for this would be Clive Owen deciding to leave the documents, and we get a moment when he's like, perhaps when everyone else is running out the bank, where he's looking at them, he's swaying, and he thinks, I've got a moment here. I've connected a little bit with Denzel, which is what we get. And he gets a moment to say, actually, I want to take this guy down. And my insurance policy isn't, I'd rather that Plummer suffer than my insurance policy.
Yeah, if this guy gets Jeffrey Epstein in prison, which he almost certainly will, then he's not going to come after me.
Exactly. So he leaves him in there and says have some scene where he can communicate with Denzel and say, look in the box because this is bigger. This is bigger than both of us. And then we get to see Denzel actually, like, he gets to crack the bigger case, the case that's been there all along. He gets to shit on Jodie Foster and actually get to legitimately do it, not just say, I've got a ring. Don't know what that means.
I do think you maybe need to, he bumps into him in the bank, fine, but you also maybe need to have him, it's a real, the more I've thought about it since we've mentioned it, him going to the safety deposit box that Christopher Plummer was keeping all these things in. And Christopher Plummer thinking, oh, this is totally fine. I'll just leave it there. It seems safe.
A week later.
Lightning doesn't strike twice, right? Am I right?
A week. He hasn't even looked at it because there's a note in it that says follow the ring. He hasn't. He literally walked down to an active crime scene to determine if he could go in there and get it. He sent Jodie Foster in there to get it.
Denzel Washington is at work, right? He's like, something doesn't feel right about this case. Bike messenger, I've got a parcel for you.
Yes.
There's a ring, a load of Nazi documents. Your BFF, Hitler.
And then there's an envelope that says, for you, private for Denzel. And he opens that.
Some speech about justice.
There's a diamond inside.
And rather than the scene when they bump into each other, you have a letter that reads dear Mr. Whatever Denzel's character name is in this,
Washington.
Washington. And you have a letter that says, and we get a voiceover from Clive Owen that goes, Detective, dear detective, blah, 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 justice is inexorable or something. Shite, I'm not a writer.
But you could figure it out. You could figure out
and
a way.
You can have that, and you can have Denzel putting the pieces together in his head, and then he's like, right, I've got this ring, and he finds out about it, and you can have him going to Plummer and saying, listen, man, I know you fucking did deals with the Nazis, and then you can have Plummer wetting himself, possibly killing himself. I'm not sold on that totally, but I'm not going to dismiss it either.
But again, what are we doing?
And then he goes to Foster, and he's like, listen, this guy's a fucking Nazi, and she's like, but she knew all along. And then she has a moment.
Imagine the scene. Imagine the scene when you've got
if this is about another oil pipeline, I can't do this with you.
Imagine a scene where he's sitting on there and he's saying, he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi.
Oh, ever since I can remember, I always wanted to do dodgy deals with the Nazis and make a load of money.
And then we get to see Washington. Then we get to see Denzel see the look on her face that she knew all along. She knew, and for him to be like, you came in to try and ruin my career. you tried to ruin my career. You threatened to ruin my career, and I've got this recording of you doing this because that's silly, and I don't think that what you then get is you get a cool heist movie turned into a elevated movie about the morality of these dodgy dealers, and that Denzel Washington at the start is accused of being a dodgy dealer, and maybe you could ramp that up a little bit so that his redemption or his innocence that comes through becomes much more significant when he's the only one, because all the other people around him, the morality is poor. Everyone else is like, and he would be the one that would shine through as like, I'm going to go home knowing that I've done my job.
Bang my
and then I'm going to get rewarded.
We don't share with my brother-in-law. Yeah.
So there's all the. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying about all throughout the film? This is sloppy script writing that two idiots on a fucking podcast can I think tighten it up. I'm not suggesting.
You want to see Sam's Greenpeace pipeline film, which has no relation to this other than
Patreon.com
starring Clive Owen and Jodie Foster, poorly drawn by Sam himself.
No, I will perform all of the roles. Thank you.
Dude, you do a great Foster.
Yeah. So all of these things, and this is like the ultimate culmination, and then we get loads of boring scenes with the mayor and blah blah blah. Like the whole thing just drags on and on until we see the kind of end of the film. So I just think
Washington goes home and bangs his girlfriend. That's the culmination of this movie.
There's your moral center, and that runs through the whole film. Like, come on, think about it.
God damn this podcast! Like, I really like this movie. I still really liked watching this movie last night.
Yes.
But like,
I have just ruined it for you.
Two heads are fucking more shit eating than one, and like, this film does have problems, but
Tell me.
kind of what?
Tell me I've ruined this film for you. Please,
No, you
I need to
haven't.
hear it.
You really
I need
haven't.
to hear it.
You haven't ruined it for me because I think suspension of disbelief, as usual, everyone's familiar with the Dave method. You have a couple of glasses of wine, a couple of tall, sparkling whatevers, you sit back, you're slightly, not drunk, but like you get in there, you sit, you switch off, and you watch this movie. I reckon, like, don't think about it, you're fine. It's a total Pirates of the Caribbean vibe. Like, just be there for the enjoying experience.
No, there's too many plot holes for me to do that. But this is why I like doing a podcast like this. This is why film criticism, I think, works, is because you get to actually, when you think about a movie, and you overthink it, and then you all this analysis, you can see that we're not just bickering about it. We're not just saying that's shit and we're being snidey. We're offering fixes here. We're offering a genuine fix, I think, to this movie that would improve it, and that you'd get deeper layers. And that is that's the overall thing for me, is this film is a cool, fun movie, which is not a particularly good compliment from me, because it's all surface level. It's all icing, and there's a little bit of cake in the scenes that we get that are obviously Spike Lee led, like the GTA thing, like the stuff about the Sikh guy. The Nazi stuff is like, oh yeah, the Nazis are bad, but we're not going to really explore it any further than that. Like, which is not a new take on the war criminals of the 20th century. So one of the war criminals of the 20th century. So there's all of this stuff that just feels like a little bit like sugar, and we're not going to get any of the substance to kind of nourish us more than maybe once. But you've seen this 10 times, so I don't know.
You like
maybe you're diabetic,
and I refuse. Possibly, I do eat a lot of sweets. You like what you like. I enjoyed this movie. I would have been interested to hear what Ross thought. It's a pity that he's had to go to Peru for that hostage crisis.
Yes, well, when duty calls, and sometimes that's what being a parent is. Good on him, Ross. Well done. It's good, Dad.
But I couldn't find the schedule, or possibly I haven't looked at it for this week. But we'll be back watching a movie that I didn't recommend. So you fucking best get ready, you bastards. You wanted us to watch The Terminal at some point, and I think that might be next week. So you're going to hear from me. You're going to hear from my lawyer about how shit that movie is.
Listen, we haven't had a good chance to just destroy a film. I think I've been very measured in this in the criticism of this movie. We've done pretty good films up to this point. Now we get to shit on probably the only crap movie that Tom Hanks, I mean really crap, that Tom Hanks has ever made. So let's enjoy that.
Ghost House.
Ghost House. Yes, maybe. There's a reference to a previous episode.
Don't you love it when we can reference our own podcast and nobody apart from you and I will understand it?
Yeah.
Money
Pit.
Ghost.
Money Pit episode. Go back, listen to that.
Starring,
it's
Shelley
very
Long
early on though.
and Tom
So
Hanks. It's very early on Tom Hanks. That is not a good film. So
I meant very on. Early on for us is what I meant. Actually.
Also for Tom Hanks, not so much for Shelley Long. Really, towards the end of her prime career,
She tried.
She tried.
Go watch that episode.
Don't watch that episode, but you can't because it's not a video. But listen to it. We should say, because we don't say it, if you are somehow inexplicably still watching this YouTube stream, we are now on YouTube. We are a podcast, so we exist primarily in audio form on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, at the Imaginary Movie Podcast. We've got over 100 episodes.
Yeah. And
5 or 6 movie commentaries, which are shit. We do a midweek episode where we watch a TV show and we talk about it with our good friend Joe. And obviously, like, comment, and subscribe. As much as I want to kill myself saying that, apparently YouTube reckons that if you ask people to do those things, they're more likely to do them. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong though.
Probably not the end of a 1 hour 20-minute episode, but that's fine. We'll work on that. We don't really care.
We'll work on that. Yeah, we're not fussed. This is for us.
So we'll see you next week with whatever film we end up watching, and thanks.
And hopefully Ross, but no promises because he's unreliable. You heard it here first.
All right, Dave. This has been fun. We'll see you next week.